Hello, esteemed gentlemen, and welcome to the channel. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. Charles Baudelaire. Now imagine a personality so elusive, so enigmatic, that even the devil might take notes. Enter the Sigma, the lone wolf who doesn't just play the game, he rewrites the rules, confuses the players, and leaves the scoreboard smoking. Sigmas don't flex their power loudly or walk into a room expecting applause. They operate from the shadows, outwitting their enemies with tactics so ingenious, it feels like they're playing chess while everyone else is fumbling with checkers. Here's a fun fact. In predator-prey dynamics, wolves often outsmart larger, stronger animals by leveraging unpredictability and teamwork. But Sigmas take it one step further. They're the wolf who hunts solo, unpredictable to the pack and the prey. In this breakdown, we'll dive into the 10 ways Sigmas confuse, outmaneuver, and sometimes outright bamboozle their enemies. Don't worry, there's no secret handshake required to understand this list. But be warned, you might leave wondering if the Sigma in your life is 3 steps ahead of you right now. Number 1, feigning ineptitude. Sigmas are masters of deception, and one of their sharpest tools is feigned ineptitude. Unlike the bravado of alphas who rely on overt displays of strength, Sigmas embrace the art of appearing unskilled, indifferent, or even clueless. They deliberately downplay their capabilities, creating an illusion that lulls their enemies into a false sense of security. This isn't laziness or cowardice, it's a calculated strategy designed to bait opponents into overextending themselves. When a Sigma acts uninterested or incapable, it disarms their enemies. Their opponents assume they have the upper hand, lowering their defenses, and often making careless moves in the process. This misjudgment allows the Sigma to observe, analyze, and prepare without drawing attention. Their perceived weakness becomes a smokescreen, hiding their true intentions and ensuring that when they do strike, it's precise and devastating. The genius of this tactic lies in the patience it requires. Most people can't resist the urge to flaunt their strengths or assert dominance, but Sigmas know the value of restraint. By staying seemingly disengaged, they give their enemies just enough rope to hang themselves. The more their adversaries feel in control, the more reckless they become, leaving gaps and vulnerabilities the Sigma can exploit. Then comes the moment of revelation. When the enemy is overcommitted, distracted, or blinded by overconfidence, the Sigma reveals their true strength. It's not a dramatic show of force. It's swift, efficient, and often catches the opponent completely off guard. This strategy isn't just clever. It's a lesson in humility for those who underestimate them. Sigmas prove that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who seems like they don't care at all. Number 2, planting subtle doubts. Sigmas are experts at exploiting the fragile nature of certainty. They know that doubt is a virus that spreads rapidly once it takes hold. A single carefully chosen word, a raised eyebrow, or a seemingly harmless question can unravel the confidence of even the most composed adversaries. Sigmas don't confront head-on or shout their intentions. They let doubt do the heavy lifting. The brilliance of this tactic lies in its subtlety. A Sigma might ask a casual question like, "Are you sure that's the best move?" or offer a faintly hesitant, "Interesting choice." On the surface, these remarks seem harmless, even friendly, but they're laced with a calculated precision. The recipient begins to overanalyze, questioning not just their current decision but their entire approach. Sigmas understand that doubt creates hesitation, and hesitation destroys momentum. It forces their enemies to pause, reassess, and second-guess themselves, often abandoning well-thought-out plans for fear of unseen flaws. This hesitation gives the Sigma room to maneuver, observe, and prepare their next move. They don't need to attack directly. Their enemy essentially starts defeating themselves, unsure of where the next threat will come from. What makes this tactic so effective is that it doesn't draw attention to the Sigma. The doubt they plant feels internal, as if it originated in the enemy's own mind. This invisible hand ensures the Sigma remains blameless while chaos brews in their opponent's head. It's not manipulation for manipulation's sake, it's strategy. Sigmas know that no empire falls from external attacks alone. The cracks always start within. By planting subtle doubts, they don't just confuse their enemies, they destabilize the entire foundation of their confidence, making it easier to topple everything in one calculated move. Number 3. Subverting expectations. Sigmas thrive on unpredictability, and one of their most effective strategies is subverting expectations. They know that people naturally categorize others based on patterns, behaviors, and assumptions. Sigmas use this human tendency against their enemies by deliberately acting in ways that contradict how they're perceived. This creates cognitive dissonance, a mental conflict that leaves their adversaries confused, hesitant, and unable to anticipate their next move. For example, a Sigma who's known for being reserved and aloof might suddenly take charge of a situation with sharp, decisive authority. Conversely, when they're expected to lead or assert dominance, they might step back, letting others expose their weaknesses while the Sigma quietly watches. This unpredictability keeps everyone guessing and makes it nearly impossible for their enemies to form a coherent strategy against them. The genius of subverting expectations is that it disrupts mental frameworks. Enemies struggle to reconcile what they thought they knew with the Sigma's actual behavior, which forces them into a state of overthinking. In this fog of confusion, they lose focus and start making mistakes. Meanwhile, the Sigma stays calm and strategic, using the chaos they've created to stay one step ahead. This tactic also makes Sigmas incredibly hard to define, which is part of their power. Labels like introvert or lone wolf never quite fit, because just when someone thinks they've figured them out, the Sigma flips the script. This fluidity allows them to adapt to any situation while their enemies remain stuck, trying to solve a puzzle that keeps changing shape. By defying expectations, Sigmas force others to react rather than act, putting them perpetually on the defensive. In the end, the enemy isn't just outmaneuvered. They're mentally exhausted, defeated by their inability to predict the unpredictable. Number 4. Reverse engineering strategies. Sigmas possess an extraordinary ability to analyze and dismantle strategies with precision, but they don't stop there. What sets them apart is their skill in taking an enemy's tactics and turning them into weapons against their opponents. It's not just about exposing weaknesses. It's about converting strengths into vulnerabilities in ways that appear effortless and at times almost poetic. When faced with a strategy, Sigmas break it down into its core components, dissecting the logic, motivations, and intended outcomes behind it. They don't simply counter the move. They examine how the very elements that make it effective can be flipped to serve their own purposes. For example, if an adversary relies on overwhelming force, a Sigma might exploit the rigidity of that approach, drawing them into overcommitting or overextending. If their enemy leans on subtlety or deception, the Sigma uses their clarity and observational skills to expose their hidden agenda, turning secrecy into a liability. What makes this tactic so devastating is its subtlety. Enemies often don't realize their own strategies are being used against them until it's too late. Sigmas operate like master chess players who not only predict their opponent's moves but also make them feel like they're playing directly into their hands. This approach requires patience and mental discipline, both of which Sigmas have in abundance. They aren't driven by ego or the need for quick victories. Instead, they play the long game, ensuring that every move is calculated and deliberate. Ultimately, reverse engineering strategies allows Sigmas to transform any confrontation into an opportunity. It's not just about defeating an adversary. It's about demonstrating that no strength is invulnerable, no plan is foolproof, and no tactic is beyond being turned into its own undoing. Number 5. Mastery of contradiction. Sigmas thrive in the realm of contradictions, embodying traits that seem to conflict but exist in harmony within them. They can be intensely reserved, yet command attention when they speak, logical but driven by intuition, detached yet observant of the smallest details. These contradictions are not random quirks, but deliberate aspects of their persona, carefully curated to confuse and destabilize those who try to analyze or predict their behavior. The brilliance of this strategy lies in its ability to disrupt perception. People rely on categories and patterns to make sense of others, leader or follower, introvert or extrovert, aggressive or passive. Sigmas refuse to fit neatly into any of these molds. This unpredictability makes it nearly impossible for their enemies to develop strategies or responses, as every assumption they make is countered by an action or trait that defies expectation. For instance, a Sigma might project disinterest in a conversation only to drop an incisive, well-timed remark that shifts the entire dynamic. In a group setting, they might stay in the background for most of the time, only to suddenly take control with precision and authority when the moment demands it. Their ability to toggle between opposing traits keeps everyone on edge, never fully certain of who they're dealing with. This destabilizing effect isn't just confusing, it's disarming. Enemies waste mental energy trying to decode the Sigma, often overthinking and second-guessing themselves. Meanwhile, the Sigma remains in control, leveraging the chaos they've created to maneuver with precision. By mastering contradiction, Sigmas don't just break the rules of engagement, they rewrite them entirely. They turn their own complexity into a weapon, proving that the hardest person to defeat is the one you can't define. Number 6. Exploiting echo chambers. Sigmas are masters at exploiting echo chambers, leveraging the closed feedback loops and biases of their enemies to devastating effect. They understand that people trapped in echo chambers tend to surround themselves with like-minded voices, reinforcing their beliefs while filtering out anything that challenges them. Instead of confronting these biases, Sigmas feed them, creating a false sense of confidence that ultimately leads to self-destruction. The strategy begins with observation. Sigmas quietly analyze the narratives and assumptions their enemies cling to. They pinpoint the weak spots, the overconfidence, the unchallenged ideas, and the blind loyalty to certain beliefs. Then, instead of challenging these directly, they play along, subtly amplifying the very biases that weaken their opponents. For example, if an enemy believes they're invincible in a particular area, a Sigma might subtly agree, even offering praise or validation. This calculated reinforcement deepens the enemy's false sense of security, encouraging them to double down on flawed strategies or overextend themselves. At the same time, the Sigma uses this overconfidence to maneuver undetected, laying traps where their adversaries least expect them. What makes this approach so effective is its subtlety. Sigmas don't need to engage in loud debates or overt deception. They let their enemies' own biases do the work. By mirroring the narratives already circulating in the echo chamber, they avoid detection and appear non-threatening, all while steering the situation toward inevitable collapse. The genius of exploiting echo chambers lies in how effortless it seems. The enemy often believes they're gaining ground, only to realize, too late, that they've been led into a trap of their own making. Sigmas prove that sometimes the best way to defeat an opponent isn't by direct confrontation, but by giving them just enough rope to hang themselves. Number 7. Preemptive neutralization. Sigmas excel at seeing what others miss, particularly when it comes to identifying weaknesses in their enemies' strategies before those flaws even come into play. This ability to anticipate potential threats and neutralize them preemptively is one of their most effective weapons. While others react to problems as they arise, Sigmas work in the shadows, dismantling threats before they even take shape. The key to this tactic lies in observation and analysis. Sigmas don't just watch what their enemies do, they study their patterns, motivations, and dependencies. They notice subtle cracks in a strategy that others might overlook, like a reliance on a single ally, overconfidence in a specific resource, or blind faith in an untested plan. These weak links, though not immediate threats, are future liabilities waiting to be exploited. Once identified, Sigmas act with precision. They don't confront the enemy directly or draw attention to their moves. Instead, they operate quietly, destabilizing the weak link in a way that seems almost accidental. For instance, they might sow discord between allies, subtly undermine trust in a key figure, or create situations that force their opponents to rely on their vulnerabilities prematurely. The beauty of preemptive neutralization is that it often leaves the enemy unaware of what's happening. By the time they realize their foundation is crumbling, it's already too late. What seemed like a solid plan collapses under its own weight, and the Sigma remains one step ahead, untouched and unnoticed. This approach is more than just clever. It's strategic foresight at its finest. Sigmas understand that the best battles are the ones fought before they officially begin. By addressing threats in their infancy, they eliminate problems without ever having to face them head-on, ensuring their dominance without breaking a sweat. Number 8. Multi-threaded thinking. Sigmas don't follow the traditional linear path of thinking that most people are accustomed to. While others tackle problems one step at a time, working through issues in a straightforward cause and effect manner, Sigmas operate on a completely different level. They think in multiple threads at once, viewing a situation not as a singular problem to be solved, but as an intricate web of interconnected challenges, opportunities, and variables. This multi-threaded approach allows them to process and solve several pieces of a problem simultaneously, making them lightning fast in comparison to their competitors. Rather than getting bogged down by one aspect of an issue, Sigmas are able to zoom out and see the bigger picture, mapping out how each element fits into the whole. They work through various scenarios in parallel, constantly shifting perspectives and adjusting their strategy to stay several steps ahead. This holistic thinking makes them incredibly adaptable, as they can pivot between solutions as new information comes in, often before others even realize a change is necessary. While their enemies remain fixated on a single thread, like a linear path of action, Sigmas are already several moves ahead, solving multiple layers of a problem at once. They see connections others miss, anticipate outcomes, and identify ways to leverage different aspects of a situation to their advantage. It's not just about reacting to what's in front of them, it's about orchestrating several potential solutions in real time, understanding that the path to success isn't always a straight line, it's a network. In the end, this way of thinking outpaces everyone who remains stuck in traditional singular thought processes. Sigmas don't just solve problems, they create networks of solutions that work together seamlessly and swiftly, leaving their enemies unable to catch up. Number 9. Leveraging perceived disinterest. Sigmas have a remarkable ability to manipulate perception, particularly when it comes to appearing disinterested in key outcomes. By deliberately downplaying their investment or concern in a particular area, they create the illusion that they aren't paying attention or don't care about a specific outcome. This feigned indifference lures their enemies into a false sense of security, making them focus their efforts elsewhere. Meanwhile, the Sigma remains quietly aware, biding their time until the perfect moment to strike. What makes this strategy so effective is the subtlety with which Sigmas operate. They don't make grand gestures or boast about their intentions. Instead, they appear aloof, perhaps uninterested, in the very things that others believe to be crucial. This causes their enemies to expend energy, resources, and focus on areas they believe are more important or pressing. They might chase after immediate wins or defend weaker positions, all while the Sigma patiently watches from the sidelines, learning, observing, and preparing. When the time is right, Sigmas reveal their true hand. The very areas their enemies thought they were ignoring become the battlegrounds in which they dominate. It's not just about surprising their opponents, it's about making them waste precious time and resources on irrelevant matters, while the Sigma patiently works on the real decisive moves. This tactic isn't just clever, it's a masterstroke in misdirection. By leveraging perceived disinterest, Sigmas don't need to force their way into victory. They let others wear themselves out, distracted and misguided, until they are in the perfect position to seize control and claim success. Number 10. Rewriting rules mid-game. Sigmas have an uncanny ability to disrupt the flow of any situation by rewriting the rules mid-game. While most people adhere to the expected structure of a conflict or negotiation, Sigmas are masters at shifting the parameters when their enemies are least prepared. They don't just play by conventional rules, they create their own, and by doing so, they force their opponents to constantly adapt to an unfamiliar playing field. The true brilliance of this tactic is in its unpredictability. Sigmas don't telegraph their intentions, so when they decide to change the course of action, it's often so sudden and unexpected that their enemies are left scrambling to catch up. They might shift the terms of an agreement, alter the way power dynamics are viewed, or even introduce entirely new variables that make the previous strategies obsolete. This creates chaos within the enemy's ranks, as they must abandon their familiar approaches and rethink their entire strategy on the fly. What's most dangerous about this strategy is that it leaves enemies feeling unbalanced and unprepared. Rather than relying on a set of known rules, they are thrust into a situation where every move feels like a gamble. By rewriting the rules mid-game, the Sigma not only destabilizes the situation, but also takes complete control, dictating the pace and direction of the conflict. In a world where so many people rely on tradition and expectations to guide their actions, Sigmas remain fluid, unbound by those same constraints. They know that the moment their enemies think they have things figured out, it's the perfect time to change the game entirely. And once the rules are rewritten, their opponents are forced to play by terms they don't even understand. In the end, Sigmas aren't just a step ahead of their enemies. They're operating on an entirely different level. They understand that true power doesn't come from brute force or flashy displays. It comes from mastering the art of subtlety, patience, and misdirection. Whether they're rewriting the rules mid-game, exploiting biases, or making others believe they don't care, Sigmas redefine what it means to be in control. Their strategies aren't just clever, they're transformative, turning even the most well-laid plans of their enemies into mere stepping stones toward their own success. By embracing complexity, rejecting conventional limits, and staying a few moves ahead, Sigmas show us that true mastery isn't about domination. It's about creating an environment where your every move is inevitable, even if no one sees it coming. In a world obsessed with loud victories and immediate rewards, the Sigma thrives in the quiet, methodical assurance that they alone understand the game they're playing, and that in itself is what makes them unstoppable. If you've made it this far, it's clear you're ready to elevate your game and understand the true art of strategy. Sigmas don't just survive, they thrive. And now you're equipped with the knowledge to do the same. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mind of a Sigma, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more insights, strategies, and ways to level up your approach in life. Don't just be part of the crowd. Be the one everyone is trying to figure out. Subscribe now and join the movement.